Hi there friends, and welcome to my beginner's guide for the Fermi paradox. I'm Icon, and this video will guide you through all the basics you need to know to enjoy this little god simulator game. I'm going to talk about the basic gameplay loop and how to pull it off. Overall, Fermi paradox is a game about fostering life in the universe. You are playing as a godlike creature trying to get life going. So you see here, this is the main screen where we do everything. Game is still in early access, so I'm pretty sure a couple of things will be added into. The gameplay itself is a very chill and simple experience, yet I'm going to explain it step by step to give you an idea what you will be up to. So these little flower-like things are so-called flares. Flares yield synthesis points. Synthesis points are used to foster life on these planets, and well, basically you manipulate events with that. So we can check out all the systems here by clicking them. There's a little explanation about how these planets are looking like, and at the beginning of the game you really don't have much more to do than to click these little flares and enjoy the notifications that turn up, telling you what's changing in the universe. After a couple of flares, our first evolution event commences, and that's our first species that we get to play. So, sapient life evolves on Tau Ceti. We get a little bit of a notification here, and now we get to choose what kind of species we're going to play here. There's always 3 species available for each system. There are in total right now in the early access version and the 0.6 early access version 4 different planets that can host 3 different races. So right now there are 12 races playable in the game. We get to select if we want a standard species, a balanced species, or a unbalanced species. What does that mean in detail? As you see here, a balanced species will cost us synthesis points, where a unbalanced species will give us synthesis points. The game revolves around all these decisions that give you either points or cost you points. If we go for a standard species, there's no big impact there. If we go for an unbalanced species, you see here these icons. They all yield minus icons and a plus on population. In this game, too much population is not necessarily a good thing, whereas the balanced species gets a plus on all manner of different resources. So basically you can decide, you can nudge the starting proportions of your civilization. We're going to go with the standard species, and we see the Odo. You get a little bit of a description here. You get a description of the planet. Overall, Fermi Paradox shines at storytelling a lot, and you should enjoy it like that. So once we have decided a species, we get this new screen here. We get a tech level, population, resource level, threat level, and, well, I don't know how to call this in short, but this is how much the civilization is leaning towards utopia or dystopia. What do these things mean? So first off, the tech level is pretty clear. Whenever we collect a new synthesis flare, you see, we get a little bit of a progress towards the next age. Every synthesis flare is worth 1 synthesis point, and as you see here, for the first time we have a different decision here. Here we can select this point here, which will yield 1% towards utopia, whereas the other buttons would have yielded a new point of synthesis. In between these events or flares, you get new development or technological events, and that's where you get to act. So just after the life has been created there, we get a extinction event here. So the food chain has been broken, and now it's up to us to act on that. The event system lets you act and gives you the consequences for that. So we can now invest synthesis points to avert that event. As soon as the first animal species disappear, the plants stop growing, the Odo tribes adopt a strict hunting codex to avoid catastrophe. You can spend no points at all and go for the results here, which mean development of technology goes slower, potential casualties go higher, and population will decline by 6 times. So you also see down here how many lives will be lost, or we choose to go for the total extinction, which will yield a lot of points and will take the Odo completely from the board. We're going to take this event here and avert the worst part of this, and everything will be fine from here on. So with these events, you see you have a need for gathering up these synthesis points, and that's basically how you play the game. You get question marks sometimes, which are notes which don't tell you what they do. As you saw here, we just got 6 synthesis points out of that. And sometimes you also get negative dots. Why should you actually take negative dots? That's a easily answered question. For once, these stats here are intertwined. The more population your civilization has, the faster resources get used up. And as you see here, resource scarcity will hit town in 6,000 years. If we take this one, we lower the growth of the civilization and the resource scarcity hits town later. Another really important thing to mention is that a negative flare gives you 2 synthesis points, whereas the neutral ones give you only 1. A random one can give you either none or more than just 2. It's really random. These guys, they don't tell you what they do, and sometimes they yield, as you saw there a moment before, even 6 synthesis points at once. The positive ones here, no synthesis points, but development for the planets. So this sums up pretty much all the mechanics you need to know to actually play the game. You see here, with every dot we pick up, the technology level increases, and you have to carefully weigh your civilization or your bonuses to get your civilizations into the higher ages. Tech levels rise up to level 10, and the higher your tech levels go, the more difficult the growth will be, because it takes longer and there are more and more difficult events along the way. Which events will hit town is completely random. Which civilizations rise is also completely random, and when they do. So for example, here we get a warrior code introduced, and now we get to choose what should happen out of that. Here we go. We could either prevent the warrior code, we could allow it, and this will make the casualties a little bit lower in general. Or we could even get this here and, or wait a sec, no, the casualties will go higher. This confuses me every time. So this skull thing is actually increasing the casualties if it is on a minus. Everything which is on minus is basically something bad. The only minus icon which can be used positively is the population one, because you don't want to have a too high population growth. So we're going to take the absolute power to gain some synthesis, and as you see here, the potential casualties spring up, and whenever a war will emerge, a higher portion of the Odo will get annihilated. So here we go, more synthesis points for us. The game's goal is almost always about selecting which civilization you want to foster more. When you play the game longer, other civilizations will arise, and eventually they'll send out their radio signals to reach out to other planets, and they will also send out colony ships and start settling the space. It all goes down with the same mechanics here, and it's really very simple to play. There's not really much to understand behind that. It's more like a story generator where you can nudge the events towards whatever situation you want it to be. I can highly recommend to try and roleplay this a little bit, and don't try to steer every civilization towards utopia, because that's first off a little bit boring, and second off it yields not enough synthesis points to get every civilization through everything. Another thing, last thing about the dystopia and utopia thing is this here has no real big impact into the game so far. The only impact that I found was that the dystopia and utopia values influence how costly or cheap it is to manipulate the fates, but I'm not really sure about that. It could be also a fluke, and right now I think in the early access version this stat is not really impacting too much. When your population runs out, your civilization dies. When your resources run out, you will trigger a catastrophic event which will eventually either wipe out the civilization, or you will have to invest lots of synthesis points to avert a catastrophe. And well, this one here, basically once it's full and the potential casualties go too high, all it needs is one war to wipe out the civilization. The overall goal of this game is, of course, to get your civilizations to some sort of technological enlightenment. And I don't want to spoil it too much, because that's already all I have to say about this game. You don't have any time pressure here whatsoever, and you can think as long as you want to, but when you go outside of the screen here, these flares disappear. Another thing here, when there's a resource up flare, pick it. There's no downsides to them. The more resources your planet has, the better. Down here, when you press that arrow here, you trigger sometimes a bug, but actually you can also trigger the history of your planet, where you get a short summary of all the events you have triggered so far on the planet. Utopia and dystopia can also influence the events, I think, but overall don't take this one too seriously. I consider it as more of a role play meter than anything else, whereas these stats here are quite important. Don't let your population growth go too high. Anything between 5 to 10% is manageable, and everything else is quite self-explanatory, I'd say. All right, that sums it up. There's not really much more to say. Whenever you go out on a planet or re-click it there, these flares show up, and you have to click the flares. That's pretty much all of the game so far. I'm pretty sure that the developers will add up more events and more interactions, but if the game looks too simplified for your taste, you'd be surprised how entertaining these stories are. And when you go the first time for something like a dinosaur civilization on Earth, you really could enjoy the game. Oh yeah, here's the soul system. Wonderful. So to outro this video, the life on Sol is also spawning, so we can either go for dolphins, humans, or dinosaurs. Dolphins being the balanced species here. So these icons, well, if you have trouble getting them into one line, this is science, this is utopia, this is resource, this is war, this is population. That's the last thing that I want to add. Let's get some dinosaurs onto Earth and say thanks for watching. I hope you guys found that video somewhat helpful. This game needs not too many explanations, and it still does its job really, really good. You could criticize that it's a little bit too much of a passive gameplay, so I'd really recommend you this game if you are in the mood to chill out a bit and let the story unwind before your eyes without having too much pressure on that. Leave your comments down below if there are any questions left. I'd be more than happy to answer them. Leave a thumbs up on that video if you found it helpful, and of course check out my channel and subscribe. I do daily videos. Turn on those notifications if you like my content, and you won't miss anything in the future. Down there in the description below you will also find my Twitch channel where I do daily streams. You might want to hang out there too. And last but not least, there are also links for support towards my video project, so if you might want to check them out, I'd be really, really happy. Last but not least, let me thank you one more time for watching this video, because that means a ton to me. See you guys next time and have a good time. Bye bye.